coast to coast, direct from Austin. You're listening to the Alex Jones Broadcasting Network.
We are back live. We're going to open the phones up at 888-201-2244 to get your take on what's happening to the global economy and where you see it going. 888-201-2244. We'll also take calls on any subject. Going to your calls coming up in the next segment. One correction. It wasn't John Wayne's grandkids. It was John Wayne's son and the grandkids, one of their houses, and leaving the country because of all the tyranny. I mean, that's the type of news that's just everywhere. That's the type of news that is going on just below the surface, and it's in the New York Times. The money is racing out of the United States because the feds are passing laws to arrest U.S. citizens with no trial, no due process. You disappear into a black hole to take your money with no due process. That's what the New World Order is about. No safe zones, no areas where taxes are manageable. France has over 80% taxes on average, and that's the model that the big private central banks want. They get your tax money. So it's the ultra super rich robbing the wealthy and the rich and the middle class and brainwashing and sicking the blue-collar people on middle-class wealth. It's middle-class wealth that gives people jobs and creates the economy in this country, and it's dying. I've seen the numbers of over 45% of our country being middle class. In the 50s and 60s, it's more like 25%. Some statistics show 30%. The point is the middle class is disappearing. The economy is disappearing. We've lost our industry, NAFTA and GATT, globalization. Globalization, they play countries off against each other. It's an international operation. And how many years did we tell you that they were going to sell derivatives of the population to the banks, to the smaller banks, to governments, to the pension funds, and then implode them, and then come back and say, give us total power or we're going to shut down the economy completely. And then we give into the banks and give them tens of trillions of dollars, and then things only get worse. We are held hostage, and the Republicans and Democrats are basically all controlled by the same group. And so, look, George Bush, you think he's bad, you put Obama in. Things get worse. You think the Republicans are going to save you, it's going to get worse under them. And so all they're doing is basically balkanizing and dividing and conquering the American people. You know, the stories we wrote about the new Robert Rodriguez film, Machete, that we began covering last Sunday here, became national news on the Drudge Report, Washington Post, and many other national publications of note. Over the week, they picked up our story, and then we got the actual script, which is worse than the trailer. And before the show ends today, I just want to briefly recap the latest developments on that front. We got contacted by Rick Perry's press secretary on Thursday and Friday, and I had a chance to talk with them. And so they're trying to backtrack and claim that, well, we're not really fully funding, Robert Rodriguez's film. So the Drudge Report picked up the fact that this is taxpayer-funded to a certain extent, and it is a race war film. We have the script, and it will just undoubtedly create division between groups of people that are getting along quite nicely in almost every case. Okay, let me get into the economic news I was just mentioning. And I'm just going to read over these headlines first and then dive back into it and break down my take on what's going on. White House, Volcker. He's the head of their economic council. Future of euro in doubt. That is CNBC. Trichet, that's the head of this European Central Bank, calls for more control in Eurozone. More taxes, more regulation, more bailouts. That will fix it. And then they get trillions more, and then they still need more. And things fall apart more, and they need more. And then they get record bonuses and take over society. Merkel battered as Germans lose faith in EU. Just a week ago, it was 70+% against the bailouts. Now it's 90+%. The Germans are being told they're going to have tax increases and cuts in their pensions to pay for all this. So are the Greeks. And, of course, there's mainstream headlines confirming what I said 2 weeks ago. This is not a bailout for Greece. This is a takeover of the EU member states by the private central banks. This is a looting. After bailing out Greece and now the euro, Germany is fed up with being Europe's paymaster. And within one day, Monday, of $1 trillion being pumped into the private banks, they said, we need $1 trillion more. And that may not be enough. And they hold the population hostage saying, you want the stock market to stay up, don't you? Well, then you better let us raise taxes on everybody to pay for these bailouts. And then all it is a wealth transference. Here's another one out of Bloomberg. Euro falls to lowest since Lehman as breakup concerns increase. Euro rescue package just buys time, says Merkel. That's out of AFP. Here's another Bloomberg. This is key. In fact, will you guys reprint me that article? I couldn't find it in the stack from Thursday. I believe it was London Guardian. The headline was Icelanders arrest and sue bankers. I want to list some of the bankers now being arrested. Oh, yeah, the solution has now begun. And that doesn't mean arresting your great banker down the street that gives you a car loan or a business loan. Those are the real banks, and we need credit in this country, and it's a good thing. It's the mega global banks that created derivatives and control fractional reserve banking and own the private shares in the Federal Reserve Bank of England and the European Central Bank that are waging war against the real banks. And remember, 2 weeks ago, the Texas Banking Association president put out an article, an editorial, basically saying what I'm saying, that the parties responsible for this have written the Bank Re-Regulation Act claiming that it's going to control what they've done when it actually gives them more power, because Goldman Sachs and others have almost every regulatory position and is designed to come in and take control of everything you do and track every purchase you make and follow every credit card purchase you make and to have lifetime access to your bank account. The feds already have that in certain areas, but finally it's been in mainstream news. People couldn't believe it a few weeks ago when I was covering it. Now it's been mainstream news that, yes, everything under this Banking Reform Act, everything you do is tracked in real time. No Fourth Amendment, no Fifth Amendment. I mean, this is Hitler's dream for this type of control. But on the subject of criminal investigations, here's a headline out of Bloomberg. Greece considering legal action against U.S. banks for crisis. Greece is considering taking legal action against U.S. investment banks that might have contributed to the country's debt crisis, private minister, and it goes on, said. I wouldn't rule out that this may be the course, their minister said in response to questions about the role of U.S. banks in the crisis in an interview with CNN's Fareed Zakaria. The program scheduled for broadcast today, and then it goes on from there. And that has now aired because I heard them playing clips of it on Bloomberg driving in. Yeah, here's that headline. Bankers jailed, sued as Iceland seeks culprits for crisis, AFP, French news agency. More than a year and a half after Iceland's major banks failed, all but singing the country's economy, police have begun rounding up a number of top bankers while their former executives and owners face $2 billion lawsuit. And when Iceland finally got the documents, they found out, just like we found out with Timberwolf and everything else here in the U.S. with Goldman Sachs, that Goldman Sachs ran this with their government ministers, paid them off, and premeditatedly set the whole thing up. But what did Max Kaiser tell us 2 years ago? He was in that Icelandic bar with the bankers, and they bragged about it.